Okay, then. So our agenda for today, we will keep working a little bit with business rules, just a little. We will talk about calculating fields on the page with both business rules, and then we will go for some JavaScript coding. We will have two more examples today for JavaScript. We will create calculation and validation on our form page. Then we will be talking about also some debugging of JavaScript code using console for your cloud environments. We will very briefly talk about disabling inline edit because this is frequently overlooked for protection of data, though we did have some part of discussion already. We will have another topic, which is actually more on the no-code part, but does require some more explanation probably, and also set up the scenery for just a touch more complex task, which is multiple selection lookup control. Then we will finish with system logs in Creatio. We will install an app that will help us track logs in a cloud environment where we do not have access to our file system. And we will very briefly talk about using external editors. So as usually, I'm having two environments, one for development, one for testing, if we want to test the delivery process. And the next item that we're going to do, to our yacht, we are going to add a country and a city for the primary dock of a yacht. And then we will use a dynamic filter. So if my yacht is docked in Saint-Tropez, then the country should be either automatically populated to France, and if I'm selecting France for the country, then I should only be allowed to ports that are French ports, as an example. So how do we set up such a business rules? From my runtime, I can click this tiny cogwheel to open yacht form page in design time, as usually, and then the cogwheel with indented list to business rules. Oh, sorry, it's a little bit too premature. Before I go to business rules, I want to have those columns here, don't I? So this means two drop downs. One drop down is for the country and another drop down is for the city. I'll give them the names. Code prefix country, lookup country, element code, also country. Lookup view. We will have a lot of countries, so selection window will work better. And maybe for countries, we will not be allowing to add new values for countries. Cities. City for the title. Prefix city for code. Lookup is also city. Element code city. And maybe we will allow, but this is something to be discussed. Allow adding new values. So while we're publishing these changes, let's take the advantage and we'll try to find our cities. Both cities and countries are already registered as a lookups. And first thing that might be a little bit confusing is the name of the lookup, because the name is cities, even though the object name is city. We can always go to properties of any lookup and check this connection. This comes from the old naming convention. So object name is singular, lookup name is plural, can be a little bit confusing, so keep that in mind. Obviously, this lookup is already bound. It comes from out of the box. But then for the cities, we have just slightly more than 450 cities, I think. We can also check here. So set up summaries, display number of records, 464 cities. Not too many cities are available. When we are adding a new city, it is important to include country and time zone to that city so that we can use it in filtering like we do. But also, it is by this time zone that when we include a contact or an account to address, we can actually relate to their local time, which has a lot of applications. One of the more important applications is how we use marketing campaign based on the local time of the recipient that is taken from the city recipient in. So this time zone column is very important. You connect your city to country, you connect it to time zone, and you have an operational new city. Whether or not allow this for your end users is up to you. They will very likely create duplicates, but I think as long as time zone works, it's fine. Countries, maybe not. So it is published. We can go navigate back to user yacht form page in runtime. And as of now, for example, I can choose country Ukraine and the city of London for Ukraine. Doesn't make any sense, obviously, so we're going to fix it. By the way, sorry, another thing that I also wanted to share, but skipped, I'm back to lookup of the cities. Cities, in fact, have their form page. So unlike, for example, our traffic lights, if you remember, they don't have form page. From your lookup, if you have a form page for this object, you will have this additional button that will actually open that page. So form page for the city is pretty simplistic, but still exists, which can be useful. Another thing that is inconsistent, we've seen that country is actually a how do we call it, selection window, and city is drop-down list. This looks inconsistent, so we will fix that before we go any further. I'm going to save this. And now to apply that filter. We're going to use this on object level. It's the only option, so all pages will use that. Add rule, and the type of the rule is not static filter, like you would manage, for example, filter so that only certain type of employees can be managers. But instead, if you want, we can look into that, but this is more straightforward. Instead, we will apply the dynamic filter. So what do we want to filter here? We want to filter city, and here by what we're specifying by what column of the city object we want to filter selection of cities on a specific page. And that is by column country of the city object. Because our yacht also has a lookup that is referencing to the same object, Creatio will be able to easily capture that and understand, okay, so cities have countries, yachts also have countries. So if yacht has a country, we should only allow cities that has the same value in their own country lookup. Essentially, cities from the same country that is specified for yacht. These two items are extra on top logic that says we will clear city if country is modified. So if I have my Ukraine Kiev and I change Ukraine to United Kingdom, then obviously Kiev is no longer applicable. This is optional now, but a good user experience. And another one, if we have both city and country empty and user selects city first, then country should be locked to the country of that city. Oh, Deepak, sorry, I haven't seen you joining. Great to have you here. But this is what I think creates a confusion because as with these settings, this business rule will not work. It's just how it's designed that it has to have a condition. And the condition will be if we're filtering city by country, then country should be filled in. This is a lower level necessity for the business rule to work in the first place. And the problem with this is that it is contradicting this feature like, well, didn't we just said that there is a scenario that country was empty, someone filled the city, so country was empty, condition thus is not met, someone filled the city and country is populated automatically. And yes, it does contradict, but this is a feature that was developed on top of core functionality and the work of this ifs and then in business rules engine. And probably due to this, people often forget this, which is an important part for such a business rule. And this is why it won't work. Okay, we have another rule. Comment is a problem. So we were talking about how to nullify this text value, and evidently, this interesting approach is cleared. Let's save and try to recreate. Back to business rules. Comment, null. Okay. City, what if I make any changes? Comment, no, wasn't able to recreate. I wonder why it was cleared, but that was a mistake because setting value, we need to specify something here. Okay, so now I'm publishing my page again. Runtime. And now we can test. So country is not populated, cities, and I have access to both London and Kyiv, so cities from different countries. And if I specify London, select, then United Kingdom is auto-populated. And should I now want to change London to something else, now that yacht has country filled in, then I will be limited only to cities from United Kingdom and none else. Next assignment is calculating fields in the page. And first, we will be doing this with no-code approach, following the general strategies that everything that can be done with no-code should be done with no-code. I'm back to design time, back to business rules. And once again, on the object level, we will add a new rule. This one, it will be working unconditionally. Oh, sorry, again, I'm doing the same issue. I need first to add a column. The idea is this. I will introduce a ticket price, and I want to automatically calculate this on client level. It's not necessarily the best approach. It's fastest, maybe. The fastest approach would be database calculation, like we've done with age. then client side, and finally application server. With application server, there's also difference whether you're using some scripted task, calling some services, or running business processes. The slowest one is with business processes, but it is no code. It's easiest to maintain and generally is a recommended approach. We're using client side to calculate the value, so it's not immediately go to application server and from there to database unless user saves that data. So the new field is going to be number, decimal, 2 points after decimal. We'll call this ticket price. And then title, ticket price. Element code, ticket price. Format, 2 points after decimal to align. We could make it read only, but maybe for later testing, you might want to keep it as is. We need to save this. Reminder, in doing this, we are adding new field on the page, also new column to the object, and now we can work with it. So back to business rules. A new rule, an unconditional rule that will always take effect, add action, set values, element, ticket price. Unlike with comment business rules from Friday, this one will allow us to use formulas. But just to remind you, we're actually limited to the available page parameters, page attributes. Sorry, it's better naming as they are called in documentation, page attributes. And we are only limited to this number of operations and the parentheses. So more complex expressions are not allowed, but you will be able to do them in code when necessary. So 9 times out of 10, this is more than sufficient. So we have price per day, double click or this add in the end, divided by passengers count, and price per day divided by passengers count is going to result in ticket price. Well, it's daily ticket price. The ticket price nonetheless. Let's save this. Save here. Back to our yacht. Runtime. Refresh browser tab. And now we should expect reactions to price per day and passenger count. And here is our ticket price. So first, let's check into the ticket price. Sorry, moment. Ticket price by passenger count. And we see how the calculation is running. Perfect. I think 10 is missing. It should also react to changing the price. And we see this working. Something that I mentioned about business rules is how they collect every half a second. So now I will go slow. Check the passengers count and ticket price. I'm changing 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5. Now I'm doing the same, only much faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So as we can see, the event of change is happening, but is not collected. And by the time that is next time, I'm refreshing it again and again, the value. I'm changing the value again and again. This is done by design, so this is not a flawed. This is done so the page is not blinking too often. But it also has this restraint. We will see a different behavior with JavaScript code. And also, if, for example, I use passengers count to 0, this does not cause a problem from business rule. It just doesn't make a recalculation. So there is no exception that is catched in regards to trying to divide a value by 0. So this works perfectly, but say, which we don't have this scenario for that, our object is not complex enough, but we obviously have some limitations here. As we've discussed, for our ifs, we don't have indentation. The formula is a little bit primitive. So even trying something still simple, such as modulo, will not work for you. And sometimes you might require that more complex approach. We shouldn't overdo this, obviously. We only need to use code when we know for a fact that alternative, no code as an alternative will not fit. So to configuration then, just as a safer approach to configuration, we'll find our user yacht form page. Sorry, I meant to open the source code. So this opens the Freedom UI Designer, but I actually want source code of this page. We already created a handler that was handling our own requests, which is push button request created by us, which is the event of for a button. Now we're going to use some pre-configured events, and we will see how to employ this. So back to our shared folder, day 6, under snippets. You will see a few items here, and this is a new handler of ours. First request, second request, sorry. Made a mistake here for the scoping. So be careful, please, when inserting. Make sure that you properly insert. I've actually included nearly included my new handler in the scope of the previous handler, and we are working here with an array of handlers. So they have to be separate items of that array. And as you've seen, Creatio IDE does have some smaller helpers, but it's very easy to break syntaxes, so make sure to be careful with it. So our new request is CRT, which tells us this comes from Creatio, and the request itself is handle view model attribute change request. And also, under day 6 links, you will see a link to handlers, and this is a link to pre-configured by Creatio handlers for Freedom UI pages. The one that we are using is, just a moment, this one. CRT handle view model attribute change request. We've discussed how the layer of view model that is connecting controls of view and data source of model is becoming our page attributes that we are working with in the runtime. So this is what this handler does. When we are making a change to any attribute in the view model instance, any will be very important to us. So this handler will react to any change of any page attribute. And some of those changes are automatic, like our autocomplete is also working through the change of page attribute. The alternatives are, for example, something that may be not straightforward. Resume request is a very useful one. It's the last item, like everything is loaded. So we open a page, the instance for all layer instances for all layers. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry for that. So resume, we've loaded everything and are ready to work with the page. And so maybe at this stage, the very, very last modification to a page, maybe some auto populations, some extra value declarations can occur. So this is page is loaded and is ready to be shown to user. We can still do something. This init request is very, very early. So make sure to understand the difference between the two. If you want to add some logic, when user opens a page, resume is best. Init is premature because data is not loaded yet when the module is just initialized. This is a very, very early stage with some limited applications, but maybe you will find some. Others probably are more straightforward. Items like this, you don't really require them because they are managed primarily with buttons and with the no-code part. So back to our example. Now we understand that the request is change in any of the page attributes. But in order to change ticket price, we only need price and passengers. We don't need anything else. And keeping it this way without an if would make a continuous loop, an endless loop, because if I am using a function that will assign a value to a ticket price, this results in page attribute modification, which results in the reinitiating this same handler, which will again change page attribute. And so we are in the midst, change attributes occurs here, obviously. And so we'll end up with an endless loop. So how do we work with it? So we have an asynchronous handler, structure the same as before. It takes in for arguments a request. Request will depend on the type of the request. And it will also take the argument for the next handler in chain. Now, when this occurs, we first check, okay, so attribute, there is a request to change attribute. First, we need to check, is it in this request, because of how it's structured, we have the attribute name, and we check whether or not that attribute name is user price, or maybe the attribute name is passenger count. And only if it's one or the other, we are running the next lines. Those next lines are we have some promise. This is how we are reading data again without the await. The context of request is too technical, but we have a promise. So in the structure of our request, we will have context, and that context will allow us to address a specific page attribute. So we obtain price, save it as price, the same way we obtain passengers count. And in this scenario, it doesn't matter which one had been changed. We're working with new values. And now we divide price by passengers. And here we assign that new value to the request context, which is the current value of ticket price that we will rewrite with newly created ticket price. And as usually, we need to return next handler if there is any. This is also sometimes skipped as we've been reported, and there can be a lot of handlers on your page. So actually, when you don't have the loop structure, usually you won't even be able to load the page. And if you will, you shouldn't expect it to work properly. Okay, now in the snippet, we've discussed how every instance of Creatio will have unique values. Not every instance of Creatio, sorry. If we are delivering or migrating, obviously this value will travel as well. But every time you create a new form page or add new attributes to form page, we will obtain the unique suffix in order to be able to work with multiple data sources. So this is going to be unique for for your environments. You cannot simply copy paste from snippet. So what we need to do, we need to find price, passenger count, and ticket price. Their actual names. Okay. Control F, price. This is the correct name of price page attribute. So if we're changing price, then we will read that price to use it in formula. Same for the passengers. Here's the proper name of our passengers attribute. Or if the changed attribute is passengers, then we will read those passengers and use it in formula. And finally, ticket price is going to be the last page attribute because it was the last one that I've added. So no need to run search for it. So finally, when the operation is done, I'm going to assign new value to the, so I didn't change, yeah, I did, a new value to ticket price. Let's save this. Refresh our user browser tab. Open a yacht. And we can run our calculation. So first difference here comparing to business rules, you will see some different value. It says infinity. Mathematically, you can divide by 0 because there are actual numbers, imaginative numbers. So it's not technically impossible. Theoretically, it just doesn't bring any value, but we see infinity here because we are dividing by 0. And also, if you now check to the ticket price, I will try to change the count of the passengers as fast as I can. Oh, sorry. So in between infinities, you should have seen new values, or maybe like this, or to have more values. So this is the difference between the two and how they work and operate. Now, how is this better than the business rule? This is only better from business rule if you have some other if statements. You can still try and instantiate content. Well, you have context, and there is a lot of available to you through that context. You will have the context of this page, and can make something more complex. For example, only do this if a collection of complex um, conditions are met with certain indentations, and you can use both attributes that are relying on data source and also on inputs. So you can build essentially something much more complex. In this particular scenario, using JavaScript code instead of business rule is actually wrong because we are limiting access to maintenance and modification of this part. It's not available from here. If I go to Yacht from page, and from here I go to business rules, this is not a business rules and in no way related to business rules. You will never see that, hey, there is actually hidden logic. Unlike, for example, our button. If I check the test button that we introduced on Friday, we will at least see that there is a special action, execute custom code. Just to briefly remind you, we've added this button that does something, writes into console, writes into comment. So here we at least see that there is a custom code, and so no code creator would know that, well, it does something, but it's in the source code. The logic that we've just applied is never seen in Freedom UI Designer or Object Designer. You will only need to know it exists, properly documented, and know where to find it to make any modifications to it. How would we debug this? Two different approaches. But before we proceed, something that might be different for you, if we go to the sources of the page, something that we've also discussed on Friday, how using React, we are loading hundreds of modules that are, React require.js, where how we are using require.js, we're loading hundreds of modules that are necessary for the specific page. And this is technically true for all Creatio instances, but for the most part, you will not see such large connections. That is because for the most part, they are bundled. Bundled essentially allows the JavaScript engine to load a page much faster. So what it means that those hundreds of modules are bundled in few files, and one of these has much more lines. My instance here is unbundled, and by default, the archives that I've shared will have unbundled instances. But and what it means, so what it means is that it is actually quite easy to find our file. So I use Control P, which is, I think, universally used, and find my form page. So here, user yacht form page. And I can find the file. So there it is, user yacht full form page. And we will see the same source code that we have just seen. And we know that our handlers are at the end of this code. So here is our request, handle view attribute change request. And here I can introduce a breakpoint that will only react uh, to either a change in price or passenger count. Now that breakpoint is here, as I'm modifying my passenger count, the execution is stopped, and I can actually look into those price, passengers, context, and so on and so forth. And we will see that there is a lot of technical data that is available as the context of this request. And we should even be able to go deeper. So we have the value, maybe it's here attributes. We have attribute change true. We have some context that there are some activated business rules. So we can go more and more through so we see all the values, current values of all attributes shown or hidden here. We can, if we go carefully through all these lines, we will see new and old value. So we can actually address that as well. After modification in memory, we'll still have the old value pre-modified. So we could maybe even build some more complex logic behind that. And then we usually use the step over to work with, we were changing passenger count. So probably here we will be able to see somewhere here we would need to more carefully track the old and new values. And we can check the execution. So we see the ticket price, we see the price, and now we see how we assigned our price. And when we're done with debugging, we can resume script execution. So this is the first approach. Unbundled allows me to find my JavaScript file, introduce breakpoint into it. I can debug it. I will then take away the breakpoint, and I can work further. To unbundle, what I can do is we have a debug mode, which is the client-side debug mode, and we have a simple code in order to enable it. So it's the Terrasoft framework settings, post personal system setting value is debug to true. It will unbundle your environment, and you can do the same among other things. But in order to run this into console, depending on which browser you use, maybe your console will not allow you to input this. I've already addressed this a long time ago, but depending on your browser, you might need to enable this for your console. I think by default, you cannot simply write into that for the most. That will depend whether or not you've used your console. So you might need to Google that a little, but an alternative to keep it bundled is to simply introduce debugger into the code. So now we'll do something different, just to make sure. So I will close my yacht form page file from the console. It's no longer here, and I can even close everything else that was opened. No, too many. No, we're almost done, I think. No, okay. We have quite a few of them, but essentially yacht is closed. This is what is important. I go back to source code. This is not a recommended approach. I'm only using this for a demo. If I'm going to make some changes to the code, my Freedom UI designer should be closed. And instead, if after conditions are met, I will simply introduce a debugger here and save. Back to user browser tab. Still will have to refresh this. Debugger is a change to client module still. And if my inspection mode is off, making modifications will not do anything. Only when I open inspect mode, I will try to do this again. And now my debugger will jump me to the debugger line, and we can still do the same as we've done before to try and debug our code. So if my environment is bundled, meaning that I have few files with tens of thousands of lines of code, which makes it practically impossible to find a line to introduce a breakpoint for debugging, I will use this debugger. What is important to understand is that after we debugged, we definitely need to take this away. If you will have more than one debugger on your page available, then it will be very hard to navigate through that. So once I debug this, I'm back to my source code. I'll save this. I will refresh user browser tab. And just to be on the safer side, I'll open inspect mode. I'll make modification, though this time I do not expect any it to stop the execution for debugging. Okay, now, so we've talked about business rules for filtering, auto autofill for our ticket price. Another thing that I wanted to share regarding to filtering, which is just like business rules sometimes are not enough to work with more complex mathematic operations to auto-calculate some values. The same can be told about filtering of lookups. They can be more complex than what business rules are allowing you in real-life scenario. It should be addressed as an edge case. So again, usually 9 times out of 10 business rule is sufficient. Sometimes it is not. So we have one of Creatio partners, Customer FX, and Ryan Farley is a great Creatio enthusiast, having a lot of experience. This is just one of the articles. You will find many more with some practical implementations of code in Creatio and so on and so forth. This one is related to dynamic filtering using JavaScript code rather than business rule, because just to be on the safe side, I would like to remind, if you will go to where a business rule as a configuration item is, you will see it as an add-on. So here are our business rules, and we can find it in our build. Y3Dev, Terrasoft Web App, Terrasoft Configuration, PKG, User Yacht, Schemas. And so we have page business rules and just business rule. Let's find just business rule. And so there are a few files here. Still, all of this is metadata that is designed, well, here we are lucky because it kind of looks like metadata. But in some scenarios, when you open, do we have any formulated expressions? No, we don't. Maybe in other files. But this evidently looks like metadata. In some scenarios, like with our JavaScript file, it can seem like the sole executable JavaScript code when in fact it is still a business metadata. So you shouldn't try to make direct modifications. There is limited applications where we can run code. And the truth is actually we can run code in source code of form pages, which will make modifications only to one of few files that are representing the structure of a form page. We can also do this for source code, for services, and maybe our own classes and methods that can be reused later, and in script files, which we will do later. So this, what I mean is that if you will follow Farley's instruction, it will have nothing to do with business rules. It's just when business rules is insufficient. Okay, I think before we go to break, we can run another example, which is yeah, we should be done in 15 minutes. Which is validation for values. As of now, with no code, we can only validate the mandatory fields not being filled in. So if I hit new, because my name is set to mandatory, should I try to save this page, I will not be allowed. I have this pop-up here that I need to enter value. I have this red line and even a tooltip that says me to enter value, which is a localized tooltip. If I want to create more complex, such as for minimum lengths, minimum crew count, minimum price, my only option is to use some code, at least for now. So back to configuration. And we will apply few. We will create a minimum value. We will validate for minimum value for price, for crew count, and maybe for lengths. For that, we will once again open the source code of our yacht form page. And I'll also share a link to validation instructions, which is an Academy article explaining validation. So you can look through the structure. You can create validators as a separate, introduce them in a separate module to then include the module into the necessary prerequisite to load a page and then use those validators. I think this is more of an edge case. A simpler structure still is to introduce a validator to a page, and on the page level, it's going to be a universal constructor, universal form of validator that we will implement in different page attributes. So it means we will have one single validator that we will use differently for different page attributes using validators parameters. So how this works? First, we will introduce the validator itself. So we can collapse handlers, and here is our validators, which are also which we will introduce over here. So validators are, back to our example, again, day 6, snippets. Here is the universally used on-page validator. And then this is a specific implementation of that validator that we will add to a page attribute. So we will start with validator itself. First, we give our validator a name. It can be any name, but again, the convention is to add some prefix here in order to make it very evident that this was designed by you and no one else. The validator structure is following. We run a function and then we return a different function. For arguments, they are using config and control. Control is actually very limited. A control here only offers you the value of the page attribute that you are validating. So this is our control. Config is on us. This is the configuration of a validator implementation. For that, we're using parameters that will have different values for different page attributes. So here are our parameters, and for certain page parameters, we will have one min value, whereas for other that can be different, and messages will also be different. We could use something universal like value is incorrect, but we will go for a more complex scenario where they will be different and also can be localized. So the structure is pretty straightforward. We get the value from our control, which is the current value of a page attribute. We get min value, which is a variable that depends on the specific implementation defined in the implementation of this validator, different for different page attributes. Then we set a Boolean value is correct. If the value from control is greater is greater or equal to minimum value, then we have a result to it, which is that Boolean, and if value is correct, we have the Boolean, and then if it is a true, so value from control is greater than or equal to, then we return a null. If this Boolean becomes false because this expression is not true, so we are below minimum value, in that case, we are returning the instance of our validator with message parameter that will also be different depending on the specific implementation. Now we need to use this validator in our for our page attributes, which is view model config. And we will start with price, and then we will test first with just price, and then we will introduce it to others. So view model config, price, sorry, price. Here's the validator. So we have model config, comma. And after model config, we also say that, hey, mode price is also using some validators. And first validator that we're going to use, this is something that you can name anyway. First validator that we will use is my super validator. The type of that validator should be a reference to actual validator available to this page, which is, just to be on the safe side, is this name. Back to implementation. And yeah, and our validator when implemented, requires two parameters. What is the minimum value and what is the message? So minimum price, minimum day price for any yacht will be 50 pounds. And the message, it could be a fixed string message, but instead we are going to use these macros. And this is how we can employ localizable string. So if you want to support multi-language, you will have different messages for all those languages. So instead of using a constant text, we will use instead a new string, localizable string, called price cannot be less. Here, under localizable strings, we hit plus, code price cannot be less, and we can say here the value is in default language, price cannot be less than 50. Add. Let's save this. Refresh. And try 49. We have this tooltip and price cannot be less than 50. So it's successfully implemented for price. Let's now reuse it. Again, the same validator, but, oh, sorry, the same one, but we will use it for what we were talking about, lengths and passengers count. Passengers count. Okay, so model config ready. And also we use validator. Only value is going to be maybe no less than 6 passengers should be allowed. And for the message, we'll call this sorry, I'm very sorry for this. Of course not. Passenger count min. Introduce new localizable string, passenger count min, and the value will be there should be at least 6, yeah, 6 passengers on a yacht. I know that this is not ideal structure. Now that I'm writing this, I think, well, probably the passenger count should be on the yacht rental. But this is like us purchasing a new yacht and it has a certain passenger capacity. So you shouldn't even try to add to our company a yacht that cannot serve even 6 passengers, something like that. But again, this is more of a dummy example. This whole project, it's more for to have some examples and lengths. So we have also minimum lengths. Length. No. This is what we need. So maybe the very minimum is 10 feet and length min. Price cannot be less. How do we follow this? Length cannot be less. Yeah, just to follow the naming to make it more or less standardized. Localizable string, again, new one. Length cannot be less. The very minimum length is 10 feet. Add. Let's save this. Back to runtime. Okay, so length 9 feet. The very minimum length is 10 feet and passenger count 5. There should be at least 6 passengers on a yacht. Okay, so this is how we introduce validation. We will see if we are trying to step away from all of these. We will see the error. All 3 items that are not passing validation with their separate localizable tooltips. So let's have a break. I have 11 minutes at my clock. Let's get back to it in 15 at 26. Give me a thumbs up, please. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So see you in 15. Okay, so let's proceed. Next item on the agenda for today is inline editing. A very, very brief intro here. The idea is something that we've already discussed, how to protect your data. We've discussed this to protect data from view. If we are hiding a column, we don't want user to be able to add that column manually. So we address that also through some coding. We just slightly modified the list component, adding a new feature. What also we have here is that some of the items are only meant to be read-only. For example, number of a yacht is read-only. And indeed, if I try to modify that number over here, I won't be able to do this. The list page, though, that can rely on the number, will still allow me to do this. I can modify this to yacht number 3, and I can even add some value to Titanic, and both were meant for read-only operation. So what I want to do in order to address that is either use maybe a business, I can still do the access rights, I can still do the business rules. We have a special action on our business rules, and we can use object level business rules for that. So this is my yacht object. I could have added a business rule where I would make elements read only. I would make number read only, and I would make it so unconditionally. So no conditions. Or I can simply think whether or not I want this inline editing and adding, because now I have some repetitive stuff. I think that this can be more useful in some more simplistic objects that are usually used as details, not necessarily for new items. The same can be said about modifying the columns by values. So instead, I will reconsider allowing inline editing, which will automatically disable adding new records that could be disabled separately, and also the floating panel, because that one is only necessary if you are modifying more than one item simultaneously. So the floating panel will also become redundant. And it's very simple, just simply switching inline editing and save. And so now, because I only have 2 pages where I can possibly modify the number, we need to refresh, obviously. I am now safe. So number is no longer available for modification on both pages. Nothing happens here, no matter how hard I click. So no extra business rules, no extra logic, no extra access rights, just on the interface level, we've disallowed to tampering with number in any manner. Now details. We're going to build a detail, and before we dive there, maybe an example with an existing detail. So if I go to Customer 360 app, and I can go to either accounts or contacts, I will see addresses detail. The idea behind detail, this is just creation naming convention, how to call this. The idea behind the detail is there some different items of information that fall under the single code, but are connected to the same record. So we have an ACOM sample account, and we have 2 different addresses. One is actual address for the HQ probably, and the other one is a shipping address. Well, I see that they're matching, but it doesn't really matter if they do or do not match. It's just detail behind an ACOM account. What it means that I can technically still create a separate section that will show all the addresses available. Every such address is connected to an account. So this information is redundant. I just added this column to showcase that. So an address has a reference to an account. So it means that there is a lookup column account that stores foreign key of an account that this record belongs to. And a detail means that it just simply stores some extra details about account. It doesn't have value or diversity or level of details in order to create a separate section to it. We only will ever need this as a list of addresses on an account. And so one account or one contact will have multiple addresses, can have multiple phones, can have multiple emails, etc. We'll create something similar for our yacht. The idea is that, by the way, an off-top. In this builds of ours, this build is going to be re-released during current week. The problem is, and this is a confirmed bug that unfortunately ended up into release, but we never hide this. We are re-releasing it, but new section cannot be added to a workplace. Very unfortunate bug. It's going to be fixed, but this is a abnormal behavior that is only true to this release. So this is why we are not able to create a new workplace well, we can, but if we are trying to add a new section here, which is our yacht section, we cannot do this. We will be, it's just a bug that is going to be fixed during current week, but it also means that I do not recommend you using my stable builds. As soon as this is fixed, I'm going to replace the files in the same folder that I've shared with you previously so that you can use it later. So here in time, unfortunately, I've already replaced MS SQL. I will replace it again, maybe not downgrade it to previous build, but rather use the re-released build here. So back to our details and what we're going to do. For our yacht, In here, we will add a detail, which is going to be a list of yacht rentals. So every time a yacht is rented, was or will be rented, a new record to the detail is going to be added. So how do we do this? First, we will create the object, the table that will be, maybe there is a different approach. I never tested this, but there should be maybe a plus. Just give me a second, a quick test. Maybe this is a faster way. So this is something that I will do later. Yacht. No, there is no plus item. Okay, not a problem. So we will do classic approach. We will first register the object, which, as we know now, will create both logical and physical implementation, meaning that we will now have object with its properties, and we will have a database table. So here we're clicking Add New Object. And let me open a cheat sheet. And for a time, Zoom is going to be covered by a document. So if you will raise a hand, I will not see it. Just unmute yourself. Should you have any questions, just give me a moment. Okay. So code is going to be yacht rentals. Title, yacht rentals. Parent object, base entity. We will only inherit the minimum necessary collection of columns for an entity to work. The following is populated automatically. We have ID. Our rental will not have a name of the rental. We just don't have a need for it. But what we need are few more columns. Rental start, rental end, customer, manager, total price in pounds, and comment. So let's start building that. Column, date, time. Options here are just time, both date and time, and just date for the day for a specific date. So we'll use date, and we'll call this rental start. And we will also introduce maybe a default value for user convenience. It's going to be a system variable, and we will use current date. We need to be careful with what we want to select here. Another date column, rental end. Maybe also for convenience, by default, this is 1 day rental, so we'll also use system variable current date. Then customer. Customer is a contact, so that means this is a lookup. And obviously it relies on the contact. Manager in that rental, which is also contact lookup, but this is someone from our company. Total price in pounds. And to align, we will try to remember what is our ticket price, day price, their decimal 2 points. So we will use the same. Total price We'll use the same for the name, maybe specify that this is in Great Britain pounds, comma, spaces, none of that is usable for the code. Comment, maybe 250 character is enough for the comment. And because it's not rich text, we need to specifically state that this is a multi-line text. You should break the line when text doesn't fit. And finally, we need a connection. Any record from yacht rentals should be connected to a specific yacht, which means that we need a yacht lookup that will store foreign key of the yacht to which a specific rental belongs to. So plus lookup, and this is the most important lookup here. We will call this parent yacht. Same here, or just yacht. And the lookup is our yachts. Save and publish. And let's try to find this in database. A moment. Server Management Studio is loading. So here is my Y3 dev, our tables. And I will filter them by name. And here is our user yacht table. And we have an ID created by ID suffix added automatically, even though column in object is simply called created by, which is a system column created automatically for base entity inheriting from base entity, modified on date, modified by also an identifier, process listener, then comes that key looking right, user parent yacht ID, foreign key. Then we have also keys for manager and for our customer. Then all the rest items that we've added. So for the columns, they're in the same layer. These are both the system columns, the columns inherited from base entity, but now we have our object ready and operational. In previous release, there was simply pages here. Now we have web pages and mobile app pages. Web, well, not quite sure. Yeah, now that maybe this makes sense that we renaming this to web pages and mobile app pages. So if we open web pages, even though detail, just for the example, this object will have its own unique page. At this time, page doesn't exist, so we click plus here, and we have very few items, so mini page should suffice. Title, Yacht Rentals Modal Page. Okay. Let's represent this Yacht Rentals page. Code of this item, package yacht, exactly where we want it. Full page, we do not have the full page, so this item is redundant. And we have the number of object columns that are available already. So let's add some items. We will need rental start and rental end. total price, manager, and customer, and comment. A simple page that we can save, close, and frequently overlooked. It doesn't, it's not available immediately here. We still need to select it from selection to actually set it to be the default for this object. And now we need to save and publish again due to this setting for default page. Sorry, I need to check. Yeah, everything's okay. Just the recording pop-up have hidden. Okay, so now we have our default page. By the way, I see you now, so you can raise your hands again. Let's close this. And now we will address the yacht form page because this is where that list will be available to us. I'm opening yacht form page in design time. And under my left-hand panel, I will find a expanded list component, which has this feature where we can collapse it, which is useful where we have multiple details for the same record, and usually we do. So this is a standard approach for details, actually. One of the things that maybe is not very convenient, that Creatio, since very recently, will automatically populate the object. And this is redundant to us because we are working with yacht form page. So it simply copy pastes the object for which is the primary data source, which is never something that we will need in this scenario. But I think that this way we are preventing when no coders simply forget to select an object, then they probably simply fail to load the page in the first place, so they wouldn't know the issue. And this way, because they failed to load because component is missing data source. So probably this way we're just addressing that maybe repetitive issue. But now we need to change. Obviously, we're not interested in list of yachts on a single yacht page. So instead, we're interested in yacht rentals. And the first most important is to apply it by page data because we're only interested in yachts where the parent yacht of a yacht rental record is matching the ID of a yacht that user is currently open. So if I open Titanic, I look into this ID, which is the unique identifier for Titanic record. And in this detail that I have, I only want those rentals where value in this lookup storing foreign key of a yacht matches the ID of the yacht that I'm looking at. We just for the testing can make it very strict. We will hide header, make it undraggable, unresizable, unsortable by users, just as an example. And we will also restrict the inline editing, even multi-select, and row numbers, okay. We can limit number of rows shown, but this is more for a metric type, like top 3 opportunities opened at this time, not for business data that we need to work with. So now we will set the columns for it. Columns are going to be parent yacht, redundant, start and end for rental, yes. Total price, yes. Manager and customer. Or maybe just customer, because manager probably is usually the same person who's managing the yacht. So rental start, rental end, comment, will hide comment, price, customer. We'll add more space to dates. And we will sort by here on the level of settings of the component, we will sort by rental start. Yeah, and because we've disabled inline adding, so we could have used inline adding records. We've hidden it here, maybe here. This item is what inline adding stands for. If we would have this, then Creatio, since recently, can already use even that to automatically add current yacht ID to parent yacht column. So that would work. But because we disallowed this, users will only be able to add new yachts using this plus button. And here we need to ourselves to add that logic that, well, if you're using this plus sign, we need to auto-populate which column values to set, auto-populate parent yacht so we don't create orphan rentals. Parent yacht, and we will use value from another field of the yacht, and yacht has an ID, so yacht ID becomes parent yacht value of a new rental. We can now save this, refresh our user browser tab. Yacht section, I'll open first Titanic and try to add a new rental. So defaults, okay. We will add a week. We will add a total price. Manager, customer, me for customer, comment, test 1. Save. And I will also copy this one. So all the items that are marked with copy this value when copying records. This is the object property, not the client part. So we're just having these options on client. Same is available in Object Designer, but this is object property. So in marking those values are copied also. So we will just make some minor changes. And we will see now that header is unavailable, which is not very user-friendly. Maybe can work for something simple like this, but even with dates, it now becomes confusing. So if I worked for a while, I probably know that this is start and this is end. You should not try to add labels on top manually as a separate items because this is a web application, and instead of hard coding like pixel place of a component, we use some more complex container controls that are adjustable, adaptable. So trying to, add your own labels and positioning them above is going to be very, very hard, if possible at all, because again, they will adapt differently to the list adaptation. But if there are some less drastic changes. So as you can see, there is no way for me to change the sorting or resize or reshape this in any manner. So this is something super restrictful, maybe more useful for the portal applications. And the final true test is if we go from Titanic to another yacht, we shouldn't see the same records. This is a true test that these rentals are allocated properly, and we don't have the plus sign to test it in runtime, but we know now that these items are actually properly allocated. But we can still go to Studio, lookups, and if we ever will create some orphans, and we want to check that, I can, and because we don't have separate section, there is no way for me to access all yacht rentals, but because every object can be saved as a lookup, I can go here and I can see that parent yacht is populated, but if I would have some orphans, I would sort by parent yacht. I would find those rentals that don't have any records, any parent yachts, and I could fix them. Now, another thing that we might need to address is whether or not, how do we work with data integrity and how do we protect the deletion data? If I go to yacht rentals, and the connection to parent yacht, I have two options here. Block deletion if there are connected records in current object with this value. We will see how this works today also. Or I can delete records from current object with this value. So what it means is, how do I react when a yacht is deleted? As of now, if I try to delete Titanic, I'm simply not allowed to do this because, hey, you have two rentals that are added and they rely on you because they use you and your ID as a reference. So this is the default behavior. But actually, for details, usually you select delete records from current object with this value. So we'll create a new vessel. We'll call this test delete. We will not be able to add a new rental because this would require to delete, to save the parent record, and we have some validations. So 50, 10, 6 are our minimum values. Now we should be able to add rental. Test delete thus already saved. And we'll call this test 3 and test 4. Back over here, and we're deleting test delete. And if we go, so no problem, they don't exist. But now if we go back to our yacht rentals lookup, just to check if we don't have those orphans anywhere, we do not, so everything's fine. Perfect. Now to next item of our agenda, which is multiple selection lookup control. And we will use one of the implementations, which is one of the multiple selection lookup. But before that, we need to discuss more about types of connections. So for this one, I will use something different. And to the left side, we will have authors. And here we will have books. Sorry, not sure what just happened. Let me retry. Authors. Books. And we can have multiple authors, just as an example. And we have some number of books. So as of now, we were talking about details and lookups. So say Mr. Pratchett, sorry, this wrote this book, and then, sorry, and then he also wrote this book. So this will work exactly like a detail, right? Just like we've done. One company having multiple addresses, one yacht having um, multiple yacht rentals. And then Ilarion Pavlyuk also wrote his own book. Sorry for this. Ilarion Pavlyuk also wrote his own book. So one-to-one connection and one-to-many connections is the two items that we see here. First author is connected to two books, so one-to-many. Second author is connected to one book, one-to-one. So with lookups like our yacht customer, our yacht manager, one-to-one connection. One yacht always connect to one contact as manager. With yacht rentals, it's one-to-many that we see with Terry Pratchett. One item in author's table is connected to two books, which means that in the books table, we have two different records and they have the same foreign key for their author column. Very simple to set up. The problem becomes in more complex scenarios where the same book is being, in this scenario, written by both authors. So now we have a reverse connection. One book co-written by two authors. And now this brings an extra level of complexity because this is now becomes a many-to-many connection. And in order to address this, we need an extra table to store the connections because otherwise it's you cannot work with this. That extra table will have an ID column. That extra table will have an ID column. That extra table will have an author ID column, and it will also have book ID column. Sorry, book ID column. And how will this work? So we have an idea of the record in that table. That's pretty straightforward. And the book that is written by two authors will have two records. The book that is written by two authors will have two records. First record will have book ID 1, author ID, which is ID of Terry Pratchett. The second record, with a different ID, will have author ID of Ilarion Pavlyuk and the book ID for the book 1. This way, this additional table will allow us to address the many-to-many relationship, because then if it will still store the one-to-one connections, one-to-many, one author, many books, and the other way around, one book, many authors. And for every such connection, a unique record with a separate ID will be created. So this is the base structure behind what we're going to do. Then the implementation, visual representation of this can differ. It can still be a simple list, or what we are going to use is multi-select lookup. So we will create yacht categories. Yacht categories, and in a way where a single yacht can be simultaneously in multiple categories. Because a yacht being seaworthy is a category, but yacht also being a double-decker is also a category. And we need the same yacht to be included into multiple categories. So this means that we need to first create an object for our categories, just like we have books, but then we will create that extra table connecting the dots. So back to our configuration. First, we will add category lookup. So object, title, yacht, categories, code and title same, space for title, base parent, we've done this before. This is a base lookup. Category will have thus the name, the description, and just not to make it too ugly, we will also add a color like we used to. A unique column that we will use to colorize our object. Save and publish. Let's first see the representation of this in the lookups. Yacht. Let's refresh this then. Sorry, we don't have to refresh this. It's just that, again, we're adding from configuration, so we still need to register. New lookup, yacht categories. We will use the same, not to have like cities confusion, we will use the same for the name of this lookup as well. Before we move any further, we want to bind this to our, like yacht rentals, we did not bind because this, what we did just during the development process, just to make sure that we are not creating orphans, early stage testing before we deliver this anyway. Yacht categories is something that we will be very likely somehow use in our business logic. So, and we can even use it in business processes as default values. But even if we won't, we don't want to recreate anything in our test and prod environment, because sometime down the road, if we will use this in business processes, well, then we have records with the same name but different ID. So first thing first, I'm binding this yacht categories lookup, which means that I have now created a data file that will simply, we can view the detail, that can simply state that there is a new lookup that is registered as lookup, no values. Now we will add some categories. Yeah, we also introduced colors. So let's first select fields to display. We will only need name of the categories and their colors. And I want to have something for my hex codes. So our categories are going to be first, seaworthy, then ocean-worthy, then something like PIP, budget. Oh, I've connected to the same, used the same hex code twice. Then budget, and then single decker. Okay, the palette is going to be close. We could maybe use a different tools, and I will use double decker with empty value for hex. And now we want to bind this data so it also arrives to our test and prod environment. And we can either select items or simply hit here bind all data. We want to be on the safe side, so we will view details. And once again, we will feel sorry for the fact that force update is not applied. So we want to force update the color and the name of the category, bound data. All items are bound, perfect, save. Now, in order to use this, we once again go to configuration, and we will create a new base entity, new entity inheriting from base entity, first name. We will call this category in yacht. Based on base entity and confirm. So this entity to properly operate still will require the based collection. But in our schema, what we need is the ID. Others are required technically, but we will use ID, and we also need foreign keys for category and yacht, just like we needed ID of a book and author for the same reason. So first, column, lookup, category, title category, or yacht category, if we want to be more explicit. And let's find our yacht categories. There they are. Second lookup is our parent yacht. Source for lookup, thus yacht. And that's it. These are two most important items that will connect the records. Now that we have that in place, at this time, we can add this to our page. Yacht form page. And on the left side, we have this unique component, multi-select lookup. We will drag and drop it in between our detail. The lookup is category. We're going to select yacht categories here. Yacht categories. But multi-select value storage is that additional table category in yacht that will connect the items and which column to display here from this multi-select value storage. Show me the value in category. Oh, this is the wrong one, sorry. Show me the value in the column called category in this column. Because it's a foreign ID, entities work with key value pair, so user will actually see the displayed value and the color of the displayed value. And also we only want those where yacht ID, just like with our detail, is matching the parent yacht. So otherwise we would see all the records that are in category in yacht table. What else we have here? Title on page, categories. We'll add this to element code, and we're actually Should be ready to go. Save. Refresh user browser tab. We have colors, so we already know that with colors it is best to restart application. We don't have any historical data, but it's just to be on the safer side. It only takes 20 seconds or so. Now to our yacht page. Here are our categories. Double decker, we did not assign a color to it, but if we select double decker, we will see the default colorization. But now we can go further. So this is double decker, it is ocean worthy, and it's VIP. So now we have three pretty categories all assigned to the same vessel. And we can do something about this one. Passenger count 10, crew count lengths 100. Yeah. And for categories, we can say that this is a single decker, seaworthy, and it's on the budget. And we probably should address to make the difference between seaworthy and oceanworthy more explicit, keeping in mind that Creatio will force downgrade the color tenacity. Okay, I think that this will migrate to tomorrow. It's a brief one, but I still don't want to rush it through. External editors, though, is a very, very, very short one. So now we have our solution ready to be available in the file system. And what is important, again, as a reminder, if I want to use external editor, this means that as long as I'm using external editor, I should not do anything in Creatio IDE. While in external mode, use file system. Oh, sorry. Using file system. No Creatio IDE. So saying now I am ready, or more like I need to open external IDE, maybe even for my client page for my yacht, because I'm going to introduce more complex and I prefer external IDs. So how do I do this? Again, first, even though I don't check my file system whether or not my code available or not, sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, for the reason we discussed. What I need to remember is the reason for these operations being available in the first place. So I go to Actions and I download my packages to my file system first before I do anything. Then when it's downloaded, the safest way still would be simply to close my Creatio environment in my browser. So I'm not even encouraged to try anything to do in Creatio IDE. So now that file system had been updated, I can go to my file system, builds, Y3Dev, Terrasoft Web App, configuration, PKG folder, user yacht, schemas. We've made changes to yacht form page today. Few files here, including JavaScript file. And we will see the same code that we've been modifying today only in a more easy to use editor. So we will still see our validators, we will still see our handlers. The only thing though here is, for example, unlike with C# code, using Terrasoft framework on client will not allow you to go to the parent objects and try to figure out what is done as well. In C#, it is a little bit more useful. We would see that later in the course. But even though this, if I want the flexibility or all the IntelliSense, everything that this external ID provides, this is the way to do this. After I make some modifications, before I do anything in Creatio, I first update packages from file system into my true source of truth, which is database, and compile, even if I'm just modifying JavaScript. This is very important. So this is how we use external editors. But again, if you are starting your experience with Creatio, we recommend first to limit yourselves to Creatio IDE. It is so easy to break your Creatio if you skip a step or two, it will break it very often, nearly beyond repair, which is a very, very hard to roll back. So now, as I'm done with my day 6, I can commit my changes and sync with my cloud repository. So this is shared with my coworkers. And they also have all these changes. Now to your home assignment. I will need a moment for this. So home assignment, just a moment. I'll need to check my cheat sheet. Okay. Today is going to be a bit more extensive. It's not necessary that you complete it before we start tomorrow, as long as you will find the time to complete all the home assignments before we end the course. You will essentially have your fast track assignment ready for you. So assignment for today. First big assignment is create new decimal system setting with code minimum price to require yacht comment and caption minimum price to require yacht comment. Value 1200 and make sure to properly bind it. And now comment field of yacht should be required when price per day is greater than the value of minimum price required yacht comment system setting, which will require some digging. Then implement yacht details list. So it should have the same set of columns that we've done today. Make sure that it is properly connected to the parent. And 2 final ones. Again, this is not necessarily that you will be ending in single go, but you will also need to implement input data validation. It has to be price has to be lower than 100,000 because it's probably a mistake, or maybe 1 million to make this more explicit. And we should not allow any new yachts with 5,000 feet long. It's an impossible yacht. Then also implement ticket price calculation. Sorry, it's GBPs. It doesn't really matter. So naming of the columns can differ a little as long as they have the same essence and work the same. And you will need to also introduce calculation of a ticket price, same logic as we had. And you need to use a handler in JavaScript, so not a business rule. So this is your assignment for from today. And that's it for today. Thank you for joining.